All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Sorry for the delay in getting this up and running. I have been having some technical issues here with Zoom. They absolutely destroyed the presenter interface for webinars. It used to work so well, not so much anymore, but we're up and running. So thank you for joining us. I'm Shawn Rogers here at Zyxel. Today we're going to be looking at some tips and tricks, best practices for using Zyxel Nebula. So as we go through today, feel free to send in questions using chat or using question and answer. Doesn't matter which one you use. Depending on the question, I will either answer it then and there, or I will save it towards the end of today's presentation. So we're going to start with just sort of some of the basics here when setting up Nebula. So one of the things you'll be prompted to do is create an organization and create a site. So sites are nested underneath organizations. And when you're setting this up, especially if you have multiple customers, each one of your customers should have their own organization in the Nebula interface. Do not create an organization for you, your company, and then put your customers on individual sites underneath that. That will over time cause you issues. So again, the main thing here is every one of your customers should have their own organization, and then you can have as many sites under that organization as possible. We make it really easy in the Nebula interface to be able to find things. So you will have two drop downs here at the top of the Nebula interface. The first one is organizations. You'll click on that and you'll see a list of all of your organizations. Once you've selected an organization, you will see a link of all of the sites that that customer has. Once you've selected both of those, it will take you to that customer and that site. So the reason you want to do this is kind of twofold. Some features are limited as to how many of them you can support on a single organization. So for instance, if you're using the free version of Nebula, you've only got 5 admin accounts per organization. So if you're putting all your customers under one organization, you will quickly run out of admins if you need to share access or view-only access or any other functionality with your customers through their employees. The other reason for this is because if you're using our optional Nebula Plus or Pro Pack licenses, those are done on a per org basis. So if you have all of your customers under one organization and you need one of your customers needs some Pro Pack features, you're going to have to buy licenses for every device under every single one of your customers has, whether they need Pro Pack or not. So by putting it into each customer into their own org, you avoid that trouble. So one question that comes up sometimes is, hey, I need a couple of these Pro Pack features for the switches, but I don't need them for the other devices on the network. So you may, depending on what those features are and what features you're using in Nebula, you may be able to take one customer and split them into multiple organizations. So in that example there, for instance, you may have one organization for your customer, which just has the switches under it, and you will put that the Pro Pack licenses on there, so you only have to buy enough licenses to cover those switches. Well, you'll leave their access points and their security gateway in a separate organization that doesn't have Pro Pack enabled because you don't need those Pro Pack features. But if you just have one org, you would have to buy licenses for every device in that organization. Now, obviously, splitting an org like this may not work depending on what features you're using. So if you're using some of the features that coordinate between devices, that may not be possible. But a lot of times this is very possible as a way to save yourself a little bit of money. So one thing that's nice here is when you're setting up a new organization is we do have a bulk site creation tool that you can use to create multiple sites all at once. And then you can go through them later and populate and configure them as needed. When you do that, you can use the default configuration. You can clone from an existing site that you have on that organization, or you can use your templates that you can configure and upload to help use that as the basis of the initial configuration for those sites. So the next thing to talk about here is admin accounts and owners. This is an area where it causes a little bit of confusion, especially with how we do things here. So a key thing to keep in mind is an owner is a type of admin account. Each org can only have one owner, and there are certain features that only the owner has access to. And the reason I bring this up is because we often run into this situation where, you've got multiple admin accounts or people who have the ability to create new customers in there. And what happens is whoever initially creates an organization, they will automatically be deemed the owner. So it can cause some issues here again, because again, certain features are only available to that owner. So if you need to make that change, you have to hunt down whoever first created that organization and get them to make those changes for you. The other problem is admins, they quit, they retire, they move on to other companies, you sell your business, and you end up in a situation where the guy who has ownership access is no longer working for you, and you need to make some of those changes. So a key thing here is generally you will designate one person in your company or one account, admin account, that you use to create new orgs and sites. So that account always has ownership access. So you can see here, we've got a list of the different admin levels here. We've got owner, full, read only, or none. And then we have site level access. So you can control who has access. So if you want somebody, to have full access to all of your sites, you can do that. If you want someone to only have access to one site, we can configure that as well. And I think we'll talk about that in a few more slides in a little bit more detail. So just to highlight here, the owner account by default is whoever created the organization. There can only be one owner account on an organization, but you can transfer ownership from one user to another. So if somebody, makes an org and it needs to be then moved to the correct person who should be the owner. Sorry, Zoom's giving me troubles again. You can transfer it back to the person who should have ownership privileges. It's something that's easy to do in the Nebula interface. So only the owner is authorized to transfer licenses between organizations. The owner is the only one who can delete organizations. They have some other things that they can only do. Now, most of your admins are probably going to get the access of full, so that gives them full access to most features for all of the sites under that organization. So they can make all the standard configuration changes and stuff like that. And you do, when you are creating somebody and designating them as a full admin, you can delegate owner's authority to that admin account. So if you, it gives you most of the features, but it's still missing some key things here. So again, even with delegated ownership authority, a full admin here cannot have the ability to delete organizations. They cannot remove ownership authority from certain other admins, and they cannot initiate ownership transfers of organizations. We also have a read-only level for an admin account, and that will give them basically the ability to see what's going on all of your sites under that organization, but they cannot make any changes. And then we have none, so they can't see or access anything. So when you set up a new admin account and you designate them as read-only or none, it will open up a secondary menu, which gives you the ability to designate access on a per site basis. So if you have a customer or an organization that has 10 sites and you need to give somebody access to just one or two of those sites, it's really easy to do. You'll just go in there, use a drop-down menu, and select the orgs that or the sites you want them to have access to, and then you can specify on a per site basis what specific access ability they have. There is also a monitor only ability here that you can set up. So that's going to basically allow them to see the monitor settings in the admin or in the Nebula interface, but it won't let them actually see any of the configuration pages. So you can give them full access, you can give them read-only access, you can give them monitor-only access. We also have a special type of account that we call an installer. So they have the ability to see the dashboard. They can add devices to that organization. They can view device detail page. And they can add or remove devices to that site or that organization. And that's all they have access to. So oftentimes, if you're using a third-party contractor that you send out on site to do the actual hardware installation, you would give them this level of access. And we also have another access type here called guest ambassador that doesn't get used that often. This is a status level for somebody that works at your customer. So somebody who is on site at the at your customer location who's there. And this is for those that are offering hotspot access and they want to use the voucher system, or they want to use an authentication page with usernames and passwords. So the guest ambassador has the ability to create new vouchers or the ability to add, remove, or modify accounts that can log into that public hotspot. And that's the only things they have the ability to access. So an example of this, for instance, maybe if you're at a small hotel, you're using the captive portal to control and make sure that only guests are getting access to the hotel's Wi-Fi. You may give this level of access to somebody who works at the front desk to generate those vouchers or to create those usernames and passwords. So setting administrator access, we'll walk you through it here really quick. Um, sorry, weird things are happening here. So we're going to create the administrator. So you go into the site-wide, or excuse me, org-wide access, create administrator. It's really straightforward. You type in their name, you type in their email access, and then you're going to choose what level of access they need and whether to activate that account or not. So the activate question there basically turns on the account that you've created. If you leave activate as no, it will send them an email so they can finish setting up their account to get access, and then it will activate them. Whereas if you just click yes, it will automatically generate access for them. So anyway, create administrator. Um, so you will go in there, you will select none if you're trying to give them site-wide access. And then here is the drop down that will show up here. So you'll get the ability to choose a site, choose the level that that person has access to on that site. If you need to give them access to additional sites, once you've selected this, you just click the add again and you keep doing that until you've configured their access to each individual site. If you're looking to do an ownership transfer, again, it's pretty easy to do. You just go into the admin interface here. You find the admin that's going to become the owner. If this person is not currently an admin, you need to make them an admin and add them in that last screen. So once you've added them there, it's really simple. Um, you're going to so again, we're creating, so in this case here, in this scenario, we've got somebody who is not currently an admin, so we're going to create them really quick. And we have the ability to create them. You just fill in their name, just like we were doing before with creating a new account. You give them access as an admin. And then once they are there, you will select them in the interface and you will choose the action button here to transfer ownership. And it'll pop up here and just confirm that the user you've selected here is who you want. And then it will make sure that you acknowledge that you are losing the ownership privileges. So the person who is currently the owner will need to be the one doing this. We will select the new owner. We will confirm that, yes, they are giving up ownership and this new account is going to be the one that's going to be the owner. You click yes, and it's done. Now we have the ability to transfer devices, and it's the same basic thing. You go into your org-wide settings, license and inventory, pull up the devices tab. It will show you all of the devices that are in that organization. You simply use the checkboxes there, select the ones that you're going to want to transfer, go to actions, choose change organization if you're transferring them to a new organization, change site if you're moving them to a different site, or if you're getting rid of the hardware entirely, you remove from organization, select what you want to do. It will give you a confirmation screen here. In this case, we chose to transfer from one org to a new org, so you'll select the organization you are transferring it to. If you were transferring it to a different site, you would do the same thing. You would just select the site that you want to transfer it to. We give you the options to keep the interface settings the same or to adapt them from the new org that they're going to. You just confirm that that's what you want to do, and it will go ahead and do that for you. We also have the ability to do this for licenses using basically the same process. Instead of using the devices tab, you go into the licenses tab. It will show you all of your current licenses active and stored. And you do the same basic thing. You use the checkboxes to select the ones you want to transfer. You go to actions and transfer license. It will pop up here and you will choose the organization you want to transfer it to. You will choose the device you want to transfer the licenses to. and you'll basically just go through and do it. So the next one is something that causes some confusion for people, and that is when you're upgrading from a free organization to a Pro Pack or Plus Pack. There's a step that often gets overlooked. So you'll first go in and you will basically assign your licenses to all of the devices in the organization. Once you've done that, you do need to go to the main tab here, and you will have a button that says Upgrade Now. So after you've assigned the licenses, you must click Upgrade Now. If you don't have an Upgrade Now button here, instead you've got, in this case, Purchase License, that's the only thing there. That's telling you that some device is still missing a license. So we don't let you upgrade your org to Pro or Plus Pack until every device has a valid license. So this is the screen now. We've gone back through and we made sure every device has it. You will see there is now a new button here that says Upgrade Now. So you'll just click that. There'll be a confirmation just saying, are you sure you want to activate your licenses? You click yes, and it will automatically then activate those licenses and put that organization in Plus or Pro Pack. If you want to check if you're operating in Plus or Pro Pack, you just go to the overview page here and it will show you the organization type. If it has not been activated, it will show Base Pack, which is the free version of Nebula, or it will say Plus or Pro if those have been activated and are now working. So something else that kind of gets overlooked is almost all of our licenses, our optional licenses that we sell, have a free 30-day trial available for you. You just go to organization-wide licenses and inventory and go to trial, and it will show you all of the trials that are currently available for you to activate. So you can see here, this is things like our Nebula Pro Pack, our MSP Pack, security licenses like Connect and Protect, content filtering, et cetera, et cetera. So before you buy a license, if you haven't used one of these features and you've got a Nebula org, you can try it out for 30 days and play with it and see how it works before you need to buy it. Now, one area that causes confusion is when you're creating a new org, it will ask you if you want to enable the 30-day trial for Nebula Pro, and most people do that. But when you log into Nebula, you will continue to see this message at the top of the screen telling you that you are in the base pack version of Nebula, even though the Pro Pack trial is active and the Pro Pack features are there. It's an unfortunate bit of UI that we have that I've been lobbying for them to fix, and they haven't fixed or changed this behavior yet. So this will only go away once you have a paid Pro Pack organization. It does not change just because you are currently using the 30-day demo. So in order to be able to check and verify that you are using it, also the overview will continue to show you are using the base pack version. So to check to make sure the trial is active, you can just go to a Nebula Pro only feature and see if it lets you configure it. If Pro Pack demo is not currently active, you won't be able to configure the Pro Pack features. Or you can go to organization-wide licenses and inventory, and instead of the overview tab, go to the trial tab, and it will show you which trials are currently in progress. So in this case, we've done the 30-day Nebula trial on a new organization. You see that message at the top that says that this is a base pack. So you go into trial here and you see that now Pro Pack is enabled. It is in progress. It will also show you when the trial is going to expire. And there's always going to be a button there that'll let you turn off the demo or the 30-day trial ahead of time. If for some reason you want to cancel it ahead of time, you do that right there. But that does cause a lot of confusion for people because they will activate the trial as part of the org creation process. They will load in their Pro Pack licenses, assign them to devices, and then be confused because it shows that message at the top of the screen that you're in the free version of Nebula still. So when you add licenses, for instance, if you add Pro Pack licenses and the trial is in progress, those licenses will not get activated until the 30-day trial is over. And they will automatically get activated at the end of the 30-day trial. So that way you're not wasting and losing a month of your paid for Pro Pack license. But it does, again, cause that level of confusion because the only way to know that the Pro Pack trial is going on is by going to the Trials tab and verifying that it's in progress. So the default way that Nebula works is you scan a QR code found on the box or the belly label of the product, and you assign it to a customer's organization and to a site. And it automatically goes online, downloads its configuration, and everything's good to go from there. Now, a feature that we were asked for by a number of larger MSPs, who oftentimes the first step in troubleshooting an issue is to simply swap out hardware, move it into a pool. It'll get checked to see if the hardware was actually defective or not. And if it's not, it goes back into the pool to be used at a different customer location. So people asked for the ability basically to simply be able to take a piece of hardware, scan it, assign it to a new customer, and have it automatically go live as the new customer's device, rather than having to go into the Nebula interface, find the device that you're looking at, and then transfer it manually. So this is the default method that Nebula has. So this is on by default. If you don't want this function, you need to turn it off, and it's done on a per organization basis. So you go to organization-wide manage, go to organization settings, and there's the option here called device ownership takeover, and you toggle that on to prevent users from doing that. Now, for the most part, this doesn't happen that often, doesn't cause issues, but every now and then what happens is, let's say, for instance, you've set up a hotel with your access points, and for some reason, an employee at the hotel or the manager at the hotel is playing around with the boxes or is messing with the access points. They see the QR code, and they will scan that device and basically take ownership of that device. Oftentimes unintentionally, they don't know what the QR code's for. They're just messing with it. And so now you no longer are managing that particular device on your customer's network. So by toggling this off, that stops this from happening. But that does mean that if you're one of those larger MSPs that's frequently moving hardware from customer to customer or site to site, that you are going to then, if you've turned this off, you are going to need to then locate the device in the Nebula interface and manually transfer it when you move it from place to place. So we had a new feature that came out last year called alert aggregation. So one of the, in my opinion, annoying things with Nebula is Nebula has the ability to give you an alert when a device goes offline for a specific period of time that you define. The problem that happens is, for some reason, the customer's internet goes down. So you've got a customer, we'll call it a hotel again. They've got, 50 devices throughout the hotel. Somebody cuts their fiber, their ISP connection goes down, whatever reason. Suddenly your phone is getting spammed with push notifications for every single device that went offline. So you're getting 50 push notifications with no way to stop it until now. So now we have the ability to do this alert aggregation. So you go into site-wide, configure alert settings, and toggle on alert aggregation. And now instead of getting an individual notification for every device when it goes offline, you will get one alert that will tell you how many devices just went offline. So it makes things a lot simpler as far as notifications go, so you're not getting spammed with notifications when an entire location goes offline for some reason. So another area here which causes some confusion is static DHCP binding. Nebula gives you two ways to do this. They both have their own pros and cons. But if you're troubleshooting an issue with a device that's got static IP, there are two different places to look to find out where the static IP setting is based on how you've done it. Now, the easy way to do it is to go into the site device client page, where it lists all of the client devices that are currently or recently been on the network. You select them in the checkbox, and it will reserve whatever IP address they currently have. So the benefits of this is it's really easy to do. The negative side of this is you're stuck with whatever IP address the DHCP server gave them. So if you need to give them a specific IP address, you have to instead go to the interface part of your router configuration and go to the static DHCP table page. So this allows you to specify the IP address that you want for a particular device. Now, the challenge with this, though, is in this case, within the client page, you get a list of your devices and you just select which one you want to do. In the interface page static DHCP table, you are going to need to manually enter the IP address, but more importantly, you're going to need to manually enter the MAC address of the device. So for some people, it's, takes a little extra time to find the device's MAC address to be able to set this up. So gives you more flexibility, a little bit harder, a little bit more work to set it up. And if you've done it in both interfaces, the static DHCP table page takes priority over the reserve IP policy. So a common question we get is, what ports need to be open on the firewall for Nebula to work? So the short answer is inbound ports don't need to be open. There's nothing inbound. Nebula is not reaching out to the devices themselves, but you do have to allow the Nebula compatible devices to be able to reach out to the internet to talk to our servers. So the primary protocol that we use for secure communication between the device and our cloud servers is called NetConf. It's an industry standard. It uses TCP ports 6667 and 4335. In order to access the Nebula web interface, NTB is also used for things like firmware upgrades. You need to open up TCP port 443. We do need to have time sync. So in order for encryption to work correctly, the device time needs to match the server times within a very limited jitter range there. So you do need to open up NTP, UDP port 123 to be able to do the time synchronization to the cloud. And then if you're using the VPN functionality, you need to open up UDP port 4500 and UDP port 500. So we often get questions on the access points where you will have gone into the settings, you will have set the maximum output power, and then you'll check the status of the access point, and it's not using the power that you specified here. So why is that? This setting is the maximum output power, not the minimum access power or output power. So the challenge you run into here is by default, we have up to 30 dB is the default option here. But a lot of the hardware doesn't support 30 dBm. So the maximum that your device is going to be able to support is 30 dBm. Or it's not going to be 30 dBm. It's going to be whatever the hardware limit is. So that's one reason why you may see a lower output on the status screen versus what you've set here under maximum output power. Another reason for this is because when you're using 5 and 6 gigahertz, depending on the channel you use, the FCC has different rules for what the maximum power may be. So it may be that even though you've got it set to 30 dBm and the hardware supports 30 dBm, the channel it's currently operating on doesn't allow you to use that. It's got a cap that's set by FCC regulations. So we will automatically max it out at whatever the FCC maximum setting is. And then when it came to our 6E products, it doesn't show the correct power output due to a chipset driver issue from the chipset maker. So that may cause some lower than actual output power to show up on the status page. So just a friendly reminder here, when you are setting up multiple SSIDs, the reason to have multiple SSIDs is to create multiple virtual networks. So you do need to be sure to put each SSID on its own VLAN. So it does require a VLAN aware network to be able to properly use multiple SSIDs. This is something people forget or overlook a lot of times. Something else we can do, let's say, for instance, you do not have a VLAN aware switches on your network for whatever reason. We do have the ability on a per SSID basis to enable NAT mode. So the access point itself, not your router, the access point will act as a DHCP server and provide NAT functionality to connected wireless users. So that way, for instance, you can put different SSIDs on different subnets to reduce the ability for people to be able to cause cross traffic between your different wireless networks. If you need additional security, we do have a feature called Layer 2 isolation and intra-BSS blocking. These are very often used on public hotspot type networks. Layer 2 isolation and intra-BSS blocking can be used to create a separate guest network that doesn't have access to your local network without needing to use VLAN. So it's a way to provide hotspot functionality on networks that don't properly support VLANs. So you can just turn this on. And the way it works is intra-BSS blocking will block wireless users from being able to contact or send data to other wireless users on the same network. And then layer 2 isolation will block those wireless users from accessing LAN resources unless you specifically whitelist the device based on MAC address. So in a hotspot scenario, oftentimes you will only give them access to the WAN MAC address. So they can only send data to there to go out to the internet. They cannot send data to any other device on the wireless network. Now keep in mind, this is from the wireless user to the local area network. It does not block traffic from your local network to the wireless network. So what often happens and causes some confusion for people is that you will connect to the wireless network where you're doing this layer 2 isolation, and somebody will run a packet scanner on the wireless device, and they will be able to see some of your local network devices. Now, you are not able to send traffic to them. They are not able to access those devices, but they can see they exist. So why is that? And usually what the cause of that is multicast. So you've got devices on your local network that are sending broadcast multicast packets out, and those will automatically get passed to the wireless users. So they can see those multicast packets, but again, they can't respond to them or send any data back. So they can see some information from your network, but they aren't able to access anything on that network. So we also have in there the ability to set up what's called guest network, and this will automatically enable layer 2 isolation and intra-BSS. So if you set up a new SSID, you click that checkbox, that SSID automatically will enable layer 2 isolation and intra-BSS blocking. Um, we also have the ability here to do programmable SSIDs. So if you're doing a situation where um, you've got a hotel and you've got a lot of access points and you want each access point to have its own unique name, such as floor 2 or room 227, you can do that in the Nebula interface. So troubleshooting the wireless LAN, we get a lot of questions on how to do this. So just take a look at the channel utilization screen. The feedback from our tech support is this is their primary go-to when they're trying to help somebody troubleshoot wireless issues, because this is the most common cause of failure on the wireless network or the cause of poor connectivity is the channel utilization. So pull this up under devices, access points, and then you select your access point and it'll show you how much airtime utilization there is. If one of these is getting too much utilization, you will have users complaining about the quality of the connection. So when it comes to wireless roaming is not a access point or router feature. It is a client feature. It is up to the client device to determine when it is time to move from one access point to another. And there is a wide variety of behavior between devices, between chipsets. Historically, Apple has been very, very bad about wanting to roam, in fact, refusing to roam. Um, I think it's better today on newer devices, but historically, this has been the number one cause of complaints. Is Apple users complaining that they don't have connectivity, even though they're sitting under an access point. And the reason for that is because their device is refusing to roam to the access point they're next to. It's still connected to the first access point it saw earlier in the day when you were in a different location. So there are some things you can do to help sort of minimize these issues and reduce those complaints about it. So one of the things you can do is enable assisted roaming. So this is something you can turn on here, which is 802.11k and v. So in order for this to work, your client device needs to support 802.11k and v. And this helps allow the access point to tell the device, hey, bud, your signal's pretty low. Maybe you should try finding a closer access point. And also turn on 802.11r. This speeds up roaming and reduces the packet loss that happens when you switch from one device to another. Another thing you can do is turn on a feature that we call smart steering. And basically what this does is you designate a minimum connected signal strength. And if any point the access point detects that the signal coming from your client is below that, it will disconnect them from the wireless network. And in the hope that that will force their device to do a new scan of Wi-Fi channels and find a closer AP to connect to. And if they don't, it will eventually allow them to reconnect on, and it's done, at computer speeds. So it's something that you don't normally notice is happening, but it does help with this. And so that's just an option you turn on. It's under Configure, Access Points, Radio Settings. It's under the Advanced Options section here under Smart Steering. So you'll enable Smart Steering. You'll have access to this Advanced Options, and it will allow you to set the minimum signal strength based on 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz connections. So you can have different settings for each one. You can also adjust the aggressiveness of how aggressive it's going to be at enforcing this. Although the aggressiveness is only supported on certain models. So certain models won't support that. So that's there for you. Now, by default, we will set that to -70. So the feedback from our sales engineer is not to use 70. So these are his recommendations for what you should put in there. So for 2.4, start at -69, 5 gigahertz -72, and 6 gigahertz -75. And this is just sort of his rule of thumb. You may need to adjust those based on the types of client devices and the RF environment you're operating in. So an often overlooked feature that we have on our switches is the ability to do automated VLAN for connected devices. So basically, instead of doing a port-based VLAN, you can do a MAC-based VLAN, which uses the first 6 digits of the MAC address, called an OUI. So the OUI is basically assigned to a specific vendor. So each vendor has their own designated first 6 digits that they use for their MAC addresses. And larger companies will actually have multiple OUIs. So one of the ways to do it here is using our voice VLAN functionality. So this is, as the name implies, intended to be used for like IP phones in your office. So basically you go in, turn this feature on, designate the VLAN you want to use for those VoIP devices, designate the priority you want to use, and then you choose assign VLAN by OUI. And we have a drop-down of OUIs and the vendors they're associated with. So for instance, if you've got in this case, because that's what's on the screen, let's say you had a 3Com phone, you could find that helps you make it easier for you. Instead of having to go and check, you can just choose from the drop down the OUIs used by 3Com. You can add your own description to them, and you're good to go. The second way of doing this is under VLAN, or excuse me, vendor ID based VLAN. It's a similar feature, but the difference here is you're going to need to manually type in the vendor OUI. And then once you've done that, you can select the VLAN and priority to assign it to. So by using this, it gives you some flexibility in how you set it up. So if you're trying to use voice VLAN and you're using some brand new Chinese made, VoIP phone that, we don't currently have in our database, you can manually do the same feature here using the vendor ID based VLAN. And it may not just be for voice, you may want to use this for IP cameras you've set up or for other devices on the network that need to be on a separate VLAN from the rest of the company network. So another thing that gets a lot of calls to our tech support is notifications in the log that a broadcast storm was detected. So the problem we have here per our tech support is that this default setting is too sensitive. It's generating a lot of logs that get people worried. So they call into support saying, hey, I keep seeing this in my log. What's going on? So from tech support, these suggest that if you're seeing broadcast storm alerts in your logs, that you go under configure switches switch ports, go to storm control, and change the default setting from 100 packets per second to 200 or 300 packets per second. And that's a much more reasonable setting to be able to then generate those logs. So now when you see those logs, there's a much more likely chance there's a real issue. So like one of the challenges we have is if somebody goes to their web browser and they pull up a Facebook page can easily generate 175 packets per second during the initial load because of all the different content and external trackers and links that are embedded in that Facebook web page. So another thing that I personally want to hype up here is our AI chat functionality. So this is something that was added last year. It's an icon that's always on the bottom right of your screen here that's chat. So that is an AI chat assistant, and I suggest you use it a lot. Now, I don't suggest you use it the way our headquarters likes to use it. It is just artificial intelligence. It's got some issues. It's sometimes gets things wrong, but I find it's the best way to find links to documents that explain a certain feature. So it'll give you a little AI summary. As you can see here, I searched for static DHCP, and it gave me a little explanation of what it is and how to configure it, but it's not very readable. It doesn't provide a lot of detail. And in some cases, the AI summary is wrong, but it always will then provide sources. So you can see here that it's showing you where it found this information. So that's how I use it. I use it to find support documents to help explain things for me. So when you're searching for it, don't, type in a sentence or something like that. Just type in the name of the feature or the function that you need help with, and then skip the AI explanation and go to the source documents, open those up in new tabs, and there's your documentation for how to set up, how to use, how to configure that feature you had questions on. And with that, guys, we are done with today's webinar. Again, if you have any questions, send them in. I'll be happy to answer them for you. If you have any feedback on today's webinar, I know it was late and there were some distractions. You can email me, Shawn R, SHAWNR, at Zyxel.com, or you can always reach out to your salesperson, Andy, Jacob, or David, with feedback that you want them to pass on. So I'm still not getting any questions coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. If something does come up, just go ahead and email it to me directly or pass it on to your salesperson and they'll relay it to me or our sales engineer. Thank you for joining us. I hope to see you at one of our future webinars.